It wasn't always pretty, but the Eagles' defense came through when it mattered against a Los Angeles Rams team that had won 7 in a row when playing their starters. Matt Stafford became just the second quarterback to throw for over 300 yards against this Eagles defense, and Kyren Williams went for over 100 rushing yards as well, but it was the Eagles' defense that came up with key plays at the end. To start with, this was a legacy game for Jalen Carter. On the day, he had 2 sacks, 7 pressures, a crucial forced fumble, and he drew a holding penalty at the Rams' 19-yard line, with the Rams ultimately settling for a field goal. The Jalen jab has become a signature move for Carter, as you see him attempt it just about every single week, and he has 3 forced fumbles doing exactly that this year, plus a similar punch-out in week 3 of his rookie year. Let's look at 2 of his sacks. On the first sack, after seeing Stafford check at the line, you see Carter wipe the back of his head and look at Nolan Smith, who appears to give a head nod, and they run an ET stunt. Carter probably heard the call from the offensive line that they were going to slide in the opposite direction, making it a perfect opportunity to attack the man side of the protection. Carter does a great job faking his patented inside counter to sell the rush and hold the guard's attention, which gave Nolan Smith a lot of room to twist inside and pick the guard as Jalen loops back around to clean up. The second sack was even more crafty. Here we see Carter shuffle over top of the center before clubbing back outside and coming up the gut clean for a sack. I'm sure you've noticed, but when Carter shuffled over top of the center immediately turned his head to the other defensive tackle. If we go back 2 plays earlier, you'll see Carter slant inside and run an interior stunt with Milton Williams. But let's go back to week 12. The Eagles come out on their wide front and run a read stunt with Carter and Williams, where they're going to read the center, and whoever the center slides to is going to loop around, with the opposite defensive tackle setting a pick on the center. Limmer gets flattened as he doesn't see the stunt coming, and the Eagles run the same stunt later in the game, though not to the same success. But that set the scene for Carter this week. The Rams likely worked on picking up the stunt in practice, and fearing the pick stunt, Limmer checks the opposite defensive tackle, which gave Carter the opening he needed to get the sack and pushed the Rams from 3rd and 2 to 4th and 11. And when we look at the crucial 4th and 11 play, we see Carter do the exact same thing. Limmer checks the opposite defensive tackle again, and Carter gets another hit on the quarterback. Not only do stunts help attack the slide of the line, they also create openings on other plays when a stunt isn't even called. Overall, I thought Fangio did a really good job of getting Jalen Carter one-on-one opportunities in this game. Looking back to week 12, the Rams doubled Carter at the 5th highest rate of his career, according to Next Gen Stats. So finding a way to get Carter one-on-ones was going to be crucial this week. Fangio moved Carter around the line, both with pre-snap and post-snap movement. He was able to get one-on-ones with the center as well as the guard. Here we see the Eagles simply align Carter as a nose and stem into their penny front. They get a big-on-big protection call, and Carter gets past the center with a push-pull and uses a nice swim move to clear his hips. Notice the chop of his arm as he finishes the swim move. And Moro Ojomo folds back inside to get the sack. Later we see the Eagles stem back into the same look post-snap with the blitz. The initial alignment forces the center to move out of his stance at the snap instead of being able to anchor right away. And then having to react to Carter slanting back into him makes it easier for Carter to knock the center back and create an opening. We also saw this double mug look from the Eagles. The Rams slide the line to the right and have the running back come across the formation to block Bond, and again, the center has to get out of his stance quickly, but this time Carter shows off his burst and quickly swims past the center. Carter gets caught in the traffic, but the running back having to come across the formation to block Bond makes it hard for him to set a firm pocket, and Stafford doesn't feel comfortable stepping up and drifts for an eventual sack fumble. The Eagles have used double mug looks just a handful of times this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw them again next week, as right guard Sam Cosmi is out for the year, so the Commanders will undoubtedly try to double Carter even more than they already would normally. Now, moving on to the rest of the game, the Eagles didn't eliminate Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp entirely from this game, as Puka had 6 receptions for 97 yards, although it took him 14 targets to get there, and Cooper Kupp had 5 receptions for 61 yards. But the Eagles did force Stafford to make other people beat them in key moments like 3rd and 4th down and in the red zone. Puka Nacua had 0 receptions on 3rd and 4th down and in the red zone, and Cooper Kupp had just 2 receptions in those same situations, with one of the passes being a contested jump ball. The Eagles had a good plan to take these guys away on crucial downs. In the red zone, we see the Eagles play man coverage across the board and use the safeties to bracket Kupp and Puka with inside leverage. This allowed Darius Slay and Quinyon Mitchell the ability to play with firm outside leverage and give them nowhere to go. Again, in the red zone, we see the Eagles play quarters but drop an extra defender into coverage, and we see DeJean and CJ bracket Puka with inside-outside leverage again, and we see Burks and Bond bracket Kupp. Stafford has nowhere to go and is eventually sacked with a 3-man pass rush. On a 3rd and 2 later in the game, we see the Eagles use their double mug front and then drop both edge defenders into coverage. We talked about using a similar play in the preview show, and we see how Jalix Hunt dropping into coverage takes away the quick throw to Kupp inside. Now, Isaiah Rodgers is covering Puka in the slot and needs to be playing with more outside leverage, knowing he has inside help, and he allows Puka to run the quick out without enough resistance, but the pass is dropped. On a 3rd and 9, we see the Rams in a trips formation, and the Eagles are in cover 8, which means they're playing cover 2 to the trip side, and they use their tricks adjustment to have the weak safety close the post and take anything coming back deep his way. But the Eagles have one more adjustment. Instead of having Zack Bond play a typical hook zone in the middle of the field, they have Bond chase the tight end to the flat instead of having the flat corner be responsible for him. This prevents the corner from getting isolated and put in a high-low situation in the flood concept that the Rams are running. The corner can sink underneath the sail route from Kupp, with CJ matching Puka up the field. Now, Slay gives up too much space to Demarcus Robinson on the backside, but I like the plan to take Puka and Kupp away on longer down and distances. On the final 4th down of the game, we again see the same trips formation from the Rams. The Eagles are in quarters, and with the number 3 receiver, in this case tight end Tyler Higbee, chipping and releasing to the flat, this frees up Reed and he can roam the middle of the field. He helps bracket Kupp inside with CJ while also still maintaining presence in the middle of the field in case Puka ran a dig. But Darius Slay 100% understood the assignment. We talked in one of the preview episodes about how much Puka relies on intermediate routes like out routes and digs, and we see Slay sit on the out route and give Puka nowhere to run. Ultimately, the Rams are 6 of 16 on 3rd down and 1 for 2 on 4th down, while also going 2 of 5 in the red zone, which was crucial with how the game ended. The Eagles were imperfect though, as here we see the Eagles running tricks to the trips formation again, and Slay gives up too much space on the backside, despite Tutu Atwell never really sprinting off the line. On another play, we see the Eagles using their spot drop cover 3 call, with Reed rotating down to the strong side curl. This means a weak hook defender, in this case Oren Burks, has to match the number 3 receiver if they run a vertical route back up the seam like we see here. But that opens space for the sit route from Higbee, and Higbee drops the pass, but the Eagles need to play this route combination better. Against this trips formation, with a lone tight end on the backside, the Eagles should use a shove alert. It's probably called something else in Fangio's playbook, but it's an adjustment to these types of trips formations where the backside receiver is a tight end attached to the line of scrimmage, or a wide receiver with the tight alignment to the end man on the line of scrimmage. And a shove alert, the corner and weak hook defender are going to key the tight end, and if he releases inside and underneath like we see here, then Burks would come down on the sit route and Slay would match Kupp coming back across the field. We see why the Eagles wanted to use this play call, as Reed is in great position to break on the dig route from Puka, but the Eagles need to communicate and match the route combinations better. Still, the Eagles had a chance for 3 interceptions and ultimately made Stafford work and forced lesser players to step up, which they did at times, but they also had letdowns at other points throughout the game. One last coverage I want to look at is from the final drive. The Eagles came out in a load front with 3 defensive linemen on one side of the center and walked Zack Bond over the opposite guard. This front is a high alert for stunts, so the Rams use a 4-man slide to the load side and have Kyren Williams block Zack Bond. The Eagles are in man coverage, but with the front forcing a 4-man slide and the blitz from Kyren keeping him in protection, this allowed the man who was supposed to cover Kyren, in this case Reed Blankenship, the ability to sit and roam the middle of the field. Reed can provide inside help on the corner pressed up outside and inside leverage on in-breaking routes from the opposite side. At the snap, we see Matt Stafford scan the backside, noticing Reed Blankenship roaming the middle of the field before getting back to Puka Nacua on the dig route. Reed's presence likely influenced Stafford to put this ball too far behind Puka and allow Slay a chance for the PBU. If Stafford had led Puka more inside, he might make the catch, but it probably turns into a bang-bang play. This was a great job by Fangio to use the load front and blitz from Bond to free up Reed to roam the middle of the field. When we look at the run defense, it was a bit of an up and down day. Kyren Williams went for over 100 yards with several big chunk gains, although the good news is that most of it was self-inflicted and not just getting physically dominated. Take this play for example. The Rams are running duo, and the Eagles slant the weak side end and defensive tackle into the adjacent gaps. Let's look at what this is supposed to accomplish. The guard and tackle are supposed to double team up to Bond, who is occupying the strong side A-gap pre-snap. But the stump by Ajomo now replaces their A-gap responsibilities, and Bond is free to to make a play up the middle. He gets downhill, but hesitates for a second, and we see Kyron bounce outside. On the backside, the center and guard are trying to double team up to Oren Burks as the weak side B-gap defender, but the stump by Nolan Smith switches their responsibilities. The center has to take a Jomo, and as the guard climbs to Burks, Nolan Smith now replaces that space he vacated. But Burks doesn't replace Nolan as a C-gap defender, and what should have been a free unblocked tackle for Burks turns into a big play for the offense. Overall, Burks made a handful of plays throughout the game, but he also had some negative plays as well, which is not surprising for a backup player, and Bond made plays shooting gaps in the run game at other points as well. We also saw some big-time third-down run stops that turned out to be crucial, but with the Commanders coming into town next week, the Eagles' run defense will need to be on point, but we'll discuss that more later in the week. In the end, the Eagles' defense came through when it mattered, and that's all that matters. On to the next round.